Oh, you did, okay. Yeah, okay. Just that. Think that. No, have you ever thought? Okay. It's not. Nobody likes it. Okay. And do whatever. Isn't it great? Yeah. Oh, you did. Do. Yeah. What grade is this? So before there, you stop the legal, legal service. You watch it. You say, no. Yeah. Do it. Watch that. You didn't have to say, right. Right, right. Your wife is always. Thorough. She's didn't want to. Why? No, we don't.
This time I need a motion to return to open session.
So move. Second.
That motion is second. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. All right, this time we'll stand for a moment of silence. We'll go into our pledge of allegiance. Today is flag. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight for our meeting. Also, we'll move on down to our next item on the agenda. We're down to our approval of our minutes, our May 10th meeting. I need a motion to approve that meeting.
Second.
I got a motion to second. All those in favor say motion aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. All right, this time we're down to our special recognition.
First off, when you come back from executive session, you see this many law enforcement folks start worrying about what happened while you were in the back. It's a little intimidating, just to be honest. But no, they were certainly invited guests. I spoke earlier with Sheriff Dixon, and certainly tonight we need to take a minute pause to recognize somebody quite special, not only to the Sheriff's Department, but also to our school district. Lieutenant McCartney, if you wouldn't mind coming up.
I think this we had a school board.
But I know who did. You were one of the first people from the Sheriff's Department I met, actually, when I came to the school district. May have been the first. I don't know that I met anybody before, but if you don't know, Lieutenant McCartney came with the Sheriff's Department in 1991, if I understand it. Don't know if that makes it exactly 30 years or if it's actually 31 years of service.
Probably always 26.
Okay.
Credit service, SPRS, police officer retired in 30 years.
30 years, 6 months. So. But I tell you, it's not only that, but he is also a very unusual person that we recognize in these days because he has been with the Chesterfield County Sheriff's Department his entire career. That's not normal in law enforcement. That's not normal in education anymore. So we know what that means to have given a lifetime of service. Not only that, but I'm with the school district. You were one of the first SROs that was appointed in the school district that worked with SROs for quite a number of years. You might remember how many, but
before you guys, did those southern field days, we was playing with the idea with you guys. And the Chesterfield Middle School, my first senior started that.
So obviously a lot of service to the school district. So I will tell you this, there have been quite a few incidents where we've shown up together, and I wished I had the gun that he had at the time, because there have been some interesting things that we dealt with during that time. But I want to first say personally how much I appreciate the dedication that you've given, but also on behalf of the school district, I want to say how much I thank you for what you've done for children of Chesterfield County Schools. And tonight, just as recognition of your service to Chesterfield County School District, we wanted to recognize you upon your retirement and wish you well, and certainly hope we will continue to see you around. So congratulations.
So just one word, just take a second. Travis River, she's Friday, at the school, very humble, and I thank you.
We appreciate it.
I appreciate what every one of you, even in the office.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much, John. We're gonna do it. Appreciate what you've done for us. You have a good retirement. Sir. Thank you. Good day.
And especially thanks to Sheriff Dixon for coming tonight, but also other guests that he brought along. Thank you all for your support every day. We live in a different world than most of our state because we have such a great relationship with our law enforcement in this county. And thank you for what you did. Yeah, and certainly, Sheriff, if y'all wish to stay to hear about budgets, you can. If you'd like to slip out, we understand.
Okay, at this time, we'll move on down to our next item on the agenda. We're down to our financial report. Mr. Whit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Good evening.
Good evening.
Prior to the meeting, you've been given the May monthly review. I'll be glad to take any questions or notate any comments regarding that. Okay, item B, we bring before you this meeting, as we've done in past meetings in June, the SCAGO GO bond and TAN resolutions in preparation for next year. The GO bond resolution is an amount not to exceed $3 million. And these are amounts issued and are continued funding. They include continued funding for the transportation portion of the capital needs plan. And these bonds are issued with capital obligations and deferred maintenance needs for the year. And they will be used only in the short term to make sure that we are making payments on existing bonds as well. And the TAN, which goes along with that, is not to exceed $5 million. And that is meant for short-term cash flow needs while we're not collecting taxes, especially in that November to early January timeframe. That amount is not to exceed $5 million. I will note that that is an increase. And one reason we went up on that is with the federal money that is at our disposal, that money has to be fronted by the district. So we want to make sure that we have a little extra there in case we have any cash flow concerns in the near future. So with that, I present to you the SCAGO GO bond and TAN resolution for approval for the 21-22 school year.
I move that we approve the SCAGO TAN resolution. Second.
Okay, we've got a motion second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor, say opposed, saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, like sign. Motion carried.
Okay, item C is a GO bond resolution outside of the SCAGO program. This is a 3-year renewal of our technology bond issuance, not to exceed amount of $775,000. And that is meant to support our continued technology initiatives and upgrades throughout the district. We recommend approval of that this evening.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the SCAGO bond resolution for technology. Second.
All right, we got a motion second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All in favor, say opposed, saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. All right, motion carried.
All right, last resolution of the evening, item D is the resolution for us to reauthorize the term loan agreement And this is for the FY '22 forward refunding of the 2012 bonds. This was approved back in April of 2020. That we would do the forward refunding. The term loan agreement expires June 30th, and we need to put that back in place so that we continue to get our rate lock, so that our forward refunding will go as planned in about March of 2022. And we recommend that for your approval this evening.
Move that 2022 for refunding term loan agreement resolution be approved.
And a motion second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All in favor, say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, I will respectfully ask for a few signatures after the meeting, if that's okay, sir. That's fine. All right. Moving on to 21-22 budget, final item for the evening under my section. You've been presented this before the meeting, and I've given you a hard copy to follow along this evening. Just want you to be aware that this version of this second reading version is based on the Senate budget proposal. As you know, there is not a state budget passed yet. It's a little bit unsettled, but we're confident that we can move forward passing the budget, and we can revisit with amendments come fall if we need to. We really do not think that will be necessary, but it is an option. You'll notice that most of the items addressed on the second reading are the same as the first reading, but I'll make sure that I highlight some material differences this evening so that you're aware of those. This budget includes things that are also in red headers of your sheet. This budget will not include a proposal for a millage increase. Eligible teachers under this proposal will receive or already have received the retro step already processed and the FY '22 step. Teachers will receive the $1,000 increase to their schedules. That affects each pay cell of the teacher salary schedule. All other eligible employees will receive the retro step. And as we made you aware before, this is already processed. So even though this is a 2021 expense, we build this into next year's budget because it becomes a recurring expense. So the cost of the retro step, which is the 2021 step, is already in there for all eligible. All other eligible employees, with the exception of administrators, will receive the FY '22 step. So we're hoping that the administrator step like we did in FY '20. All other employees, with the exception of bus drivers, and I'll come back to another bullet on that in just a minute, but all other employees, with the exception of bus drivers, receive a 2% cost of living adjustment. That 2% cost of living adjustment does include the administrative salary schedule. Yes.
Does that include retired classified person that's certified with this 2% rating?
Yes.
It doesn't include retired.
Yes, it would impact the schedule in which they're paid. Yes.
Classified.
Yes, sir. That is correct. And in that last bullet, we said except bus drivers. Bus driver cost of living adjustments are separately funded in state budgets. So there's still a little bit of pending legislation on bus driver pay increase. So we're waiting for final news on that. The budget passes later this month. But we want to assure you that whatever happens in the state legislation, that those also would receive nothing less than 2% on the Chesterfield County School District schedules. We're waiting to see if what we have heard is an actual mandate or how that is being addressed. Those schedules and that funding are handled separately in the legislative items. Okay. And we are well prepared, even in the budget we're going to pass, that we can handle that regardless of what the final say-so is. And last point, working retirees will move back to scale. So no more negotiated salaries for working retirees that will be put back on scale. In addition to those bullets, remind you that the 1% employer retirement increase gets reinstated for the 21-22 year as it was frozen in the past continuing resolution. And the other item in the header regarding the employer health cost, I'm going to address as I go through the items. So any other questions about what's included at this point? All right. Again, want to highlight some of the material differences from the first reading. The retroactive step that is built in that you see on the second reading of $464,000. That is simply fine-tuned from the first reading. And we know the true actual cost of that. The 21-22 step, which is mandated for teachers and is being given to all others eligible, again, with the exception of administration, went to $855,000. That was basically some consolidation of some other things we had broken out in the first reading because we weren't sure exactly how that was going to be handled. And that line also includes the $1,000 increase to teacher salary schedules. The 2% cost of living increase that I mentioned for all others is a response to the $1,000 increase for the teacher certified schedules. The district's making the decision to propose to you, we do a 2% cost of living adjustment to all other schedules so that we are addressing everyone in this budget proposal. That's $171,000. As I mentioned, the working retiree negotiation does present a little bit of an increase to the budget, but we've been preparing for that for quite some time, but it's very little change from the first readings that you saw. The employer health increase and the PEBA retirement increase, we had pretty well figured what the 1% increase would be, but we got thrown a little bit of a curveball between the House version and the Senate version, where the employer health increase percentage went up from 0.8% to 2.6%. So you will see some change in that line, taking it to a $462,000 change. With those exceptions, the expenditure column remains virtually the same as it did for first reading, to include some small increases for transportation costs. In our savings section versus the current year continuing resolution of $573,000, those are verified, confirmed changes that we have already made in the system. And I'll remind you that staffing calculations and changes will continue to happen through the summer. So those are the highlights of the expenditures. I'll pause there if there are any questions on that information. Okay. Looking at the revenue side, there were substantial changes here. Keeping in mind that the House version did not do very much for revenue. There was only an 11% increase in base student cost, and no funding had been put into those projections to help us cover the $1,000 increase in teacher salary schedules, and no funding had been put in there to cover the retroactive step. Those changes have been put in the projections for the Senate version, and those have been put into the categories where we know we'll be receiving them at. Otherwise, or if you go back to the first reading, we were just speculating at the time what the amount would be, but did not know the exact line that it would come to. So aid to classrooms for teacher salary schedule, cost increases, $750,000, 581. The updated tier 3 state reimbursement goes up to $255,000. Aid to district's classroom fringe has greatly increased from the prior reading to $525,000. You may recall on the first reading, we actually had EFA as a reduction because of the enrollment changes. Well, the Senate came back, and if you noticed at the top, we received $16 additional base student costs in the Senate version. And our index of tax payability made it where we will receive more state support. So we're actually getting a little bit of an increase in EFA of about $200,000. Senate version added the retiree insurance revenue, which we knew would be coming, but it had not been published at the time of first reading. And our transfers from EIA or special revenue is simply for our teacher salary supplement and the small portion of fringe increase that comes from the EIA side. The revenue, we still need to continue, we will continue to decrease the revenue expectations for interest income for obvious reasons. That hasn't been good to us over the past 18 months or so. And we will no longer need capital funds transfer as we will be utilizing all of the additional federal revenues, et cetera, to take care of those type projects. So with that, we have a net change of $1,666,000 to expenses, or 2.71%. For $63,071,891. We have a net change of $1,530,000 on revenue, or 2.54%, for $61,781,744. This leaves us a fund balance reliance of $1,290,147. I know we've talked a lot before about fund balance reliance and is this reasonable and how good do we feel about this budget. We feel really good about this budget. We feel really good about the other supply, travel accounts, all those things that are already in place. And we'll continue to rely on special revenue accounts to supplement those. We remain to be conservative when we present you a budget. And we continue to understand that we will look to find savings anywhere we can through the summer during the hiring process. And that we will, at this point, we do not think that we will use the fund balance that we have, the reliance we have on the current 2021 budget. So we feel like we'll be able to continue to come to you with savings and a projected end to the fund balance at the end of FY22 that's very positive and gives us a very financial solid situation. With that, the last thing that I'll hit is the fund balance analysis at the bottom right. Just to show you that if we were to use the fund balance we have allotted for this year, and if we were to need to use the fund balance allotted that we are proposing this evening, we would still have a fund balance, unassigned fund balance of $6.1 billion at the end of FY22. And that is very, very positive and something we can live with, but it's something we don't think we'll have to live with because we feel very good about the direction we're going. So with that, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I will turn it over to Dr. Goodwin for any comments and recommendations.
Members of the board, Mr. Chair, we feel very confident that this is a budget that takes care of the things that we needed to take care of. This was an interesting year because the state overall, when they mandated something, not to say they funded it 100%, but they came closer than they have probably in any year I've been here to actually funding the things that they mandated. Not only that, but we do appear that we're going to end FY21 on very stable financial footing. Mr. Willis already mentioned the 1.1 fund balance reliance that we had budgeted last year, and the fact that we don't feel like we'll use it reasonably going into it. We have a lot of challenges before us with staffing and such. In some ways, those challenges help us, but in some ways, they also hurt us. When we cannot fill a position, obviously that's positive for the bottom line, but it's also not always positive for students. But so we balance that within our proposal to you. We will rely a good bit on the federal funding we're going to receive. One thing we do not want to do is rely on it to a point that 3 years from now, we have to undergo a major cut in order to balance the budget. School districts have become dependent on things like stimulus and
like ESSER and things like that, and then the bottom drops off in that funding end, that's a very dangerous thing. And we're not going to budget in that manner, because we don't want to be in that situation 3 years down the road. But obviously, it's a budget that we feel good about. It's been one of the easier years to develop a budget, and we do recommend approval.
Are we looking at, especially with teacher children, are we looking at, virtual school waiting for, the high school level, since we got a math teacher, one school that can handle that maybe? You follow what I'm saying, in order to say?
Yes, sir. We do, we actually do it a little differently in that we try to compensate within the same building. For instance, we have a math teacher who, a position that doesn't fill. We have 3 math teachers at that high school. We will compensate them to teach an additional period a day to cover those classes. And we do that pretty frequently at the high school and even at the middle school level.
One other question. You said something about you anticipated more information about bus drivers possibly increase. Do we anticipate any funding from the state to help with that?
Yes. Yes. We feel like whatever we see an increase, we will see in the funding also. Yes, sir.
I have one question. And we're doing a good job at certainly budget and finance, but like you said earlier, and looking at total support to school as well as the community, do we have social workers in our school, and is that a part of our strategy going forward to kind of support some of these students that may have some issues that are a part of the social center that bring into class?
We do have some parenting coordinators in elementary schools throughout the district, and a couple, I'm looking for the right faces, I don't see it. Also, middle school, I think we have a couple, we call them parenting coordinators rather than social workers.
Okay.
But yes, sir, we do. And we do also have mental health contracted mental health in all of our schools. Yes. Okay, everyone's heard the presentation at this time, anybody want to make a motion for 2021, 2022?
Mr. Chairman, I was that, we approved the second reading of 2022 school budget.
Second.
You got a motion to second, any more discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote, all those in favor, say motion, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Aye, motion carried. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, board, for your consideration, your help through the process, and any feedback that you've given us. And thank you for putting that in place. We feel good about it.
We thank you for your hard work you've got doing, and always for the hard work you've done to build our fund balance back up. We came a long ways from where we were at, and it's good to always hear we're going in the right direction. I'm going to we haven't built in the budget, but here we don't think we'll be using that. That seems more positive. So we do appreciate the hard work y'all done to get us in this position. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, this time we're down to our next item. We're down to our personnel report, Dr. Anderson.
Again, good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. At this time, I'd like to recommend the following exhibits for your approval. Exhibits A through H.
So moved. I've got a motion in a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All those in favor say motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, pass. Thank you, sir. You can continue. You got anything on the personnel update?
That's it.
That's it? Okay. That's something. Gotta make sure. Thank you, sir. Appreciate you. We're down to our next item, down to our written reports disposal.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'd like to highlight a few items from your June 2021 curriculum report. Summer programs have begun. High schools began last week, doing some of their content recovery. Our middle school and elementary programs will begin tomorrow for students. Teachers were in the buildings today preparing for those students to return. It was amazing. I went by to visit several of our schools, and the number of teachers that are in the building and getting ready for our kids is almost looks like full school. We are going to be providing programs for grades 4K through 8th grade from 7:45 in the morning until 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So it will be a full school day for those teachers and students. We look forward to their arrival tomorrow. Lots of buses on the road. It'll be a little bit different. You'll see buses rolling in the summertime. There'll be plenty of buses on the road getting those kids to school. Hopefully it will be a positive experience. We'll get these kids caught up this summer. Great news, our teachers in grades 3 through 12 received their Chromebooks to take home this summer. They will be receiving assignments for modules that they can do on their own time during the summer. And we will also be providing additional face-to-face training. We have 2 days already set up, July 28th and 29th for teachers. And our instructional technology specialists will be meeting this summer to make those plans for those trainings. Great news on the adult education front. We are up to 53 total graduates. That includes, let me get this right, 44 GED graduates, 8 high school graduates, and who's my extra?
9 high school graduates.
9 high school graduates. Fantastic. Are there any questions?
Being fair to her, I literally got a text while we were sitting here.
That's great.
Trustee Ms. Wilson, do you have a general idea of how many overall students that will be in some school this year?
Right off the top of my head, no. In fact, today we were looking at our 4K program because we have to provide them with snacks. So we're making sure that we have enough snacks for this week. I can get that number for you. I budgeted depending on percentage of students at schools and so forth. Our class size will not be any more than 15. It'll be 15 or less in class sizes. We are combining some of the schools. Jefferson's children will be bused to Pageland Elementary or Petersburg. Plainview will be going to the McBee area, and then our Schraub areas, primary as well as the intermediate will have programs. And then Edwards students are going over to Ruby. They usually share a facility and teachers. But I'll be happy to get that total number, especially after tomorrow, we'll know for sure.
And I ask that because we've been counting this post-pandemic, I said, it's interesting to know how many actually
Take advantage.
Yes.
Well, I know today I was at New Heights. We were up to 132 that were planning on coming. So I'm excited to hear that many middle schoolers were willing to come.
I have one question. Will we be doing any virtual instruction?
We will not. We decided that was not best for summertime. We need to get those kids face to face, and we wanted them in our buildings. So, in fact, I've had some parents that have had students virtual throughout the year that are willing for them to come to summer programs, and it excites me that they're willing. Like, well, what about next year? I said, let's make this a trial run. Let's see how it goes this summer. Less kids in the building, and hopefully that will encourage them to bring them back to school for next year. Any other questions?
Thank you, Ms. Wilson.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we have the superintendent's report. Mr. Chair, each year we recommend the school attorneys for the upcoming school year. That would be Doug Freeman Lyons out of Columbia would be our school type attorneys. Our attorneys for other necessary kinds of things would be Spencer Law Firm in Chesterfield. We would recommend approval of those 2 firms.
So moved.
Motion and second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the all in favor, say motion saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, right sign. Motion carried. Next, we have second reading of some policy revisions, ABC, GBED, and JICG.
As you recall from last month, all that involved was the addition of the wording alternative nicotine products. And that just brings us into line with the DNEC regulations. So we would recommend second reading approval of those three policies.
So moved.
Second.
Move to second on the floor. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All in favor, say motion saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Motion carried. Okay, the next is a little different situation. With the change in the laws about intruder drills and other severe weather drills, this past year in legislation, School Association is recommending that we combine some policies. That would be policy EB, EBC, and EBCB, all into one policy, EBCB. So we would actually be deleting two policies once we have both readings of approval on EBCB. Basically, what this does is this takes care of your assessment of threats, inspections, evacuation plans, fire drills, active shooter, and severe weather, and it puts all of those into one policy. You'll notice if you read through the ones that we're striking, they each have a little piece of that, and all we're doing is putting all of those into one policy. So we would recommend first reading approval of policy EBCB, and then we would bring it back to you at our next meeting for second.
So we want the first reading.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, I call for the vote. All those in favor say motion saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. There, motion carries. Unlike the start of school, the closing went pretty well. It was a different closing since the high schools finished a week early. The elementary and middles went, they get additional 5 leave days that were paid for. I actually had a teacher tell me that last week that they weren't sure it was worth the 5 days extra pay that they received back in that process. I'm saying, you know, tongue in cheek, at the end of the year is always difficult. Those are tough times. But we obviously had, you know, we had an ever-changing school year with the whole idea of the re-entry and how we went through that process. And it's interesting, as part of our ESSA-3 money, we have to develop a re-entry plan. And when you say, well, we've already re-entered, what do you do? And they said, basically go back through your timeline of how you re-entered, and that was your re-entry plan. We didn't know it was called that at the time, but I'm glad we kept good notes on the steps too. So we will be watching what state directives are related to future into the school, upcoming school year. I would tell you this, you know, we will move away from mandated masks except on school buses. That is a federal requirement. We will, you know, and unless our numbers were to change, our positive counts would change in the district, we will continue as we have been. With the 15 students per class, we should be able to socially distance quite well. But I can guarantee you, if we're going to have a 4K class where we're going to have one student test positive, we're going to have to send the whole group home. And that's just the way 4K, and that's the way the little ones are. They crawl over each other and all. That's okay. So we will monitor and adjust throughout the school year and work on that. The reason Dr. Anderson did not have a personnel report tonight on COVID was because basically we had nothing to report. So, you know, if there's nothing to report, there's nothing to report, which was a really good closeout to the year. Yes.
15 students per class. But that was primary.
That's the cap for everybody.
That's cap for everybody.
Yes, sir.
Social distance being done.
We can do social distancing.
3 feet, 9 to 6.
Yes, sir.
And the mask is optional.
Mask or option. Okay. Last thing on my remarks is adult education graduation is on Tuesday, June 29th at Chesterfield Middle School. Based on those numbers, we may have quite a crowd. So I encourage you to come. I think I've already let you know Dr. Anderson will be there in my stead because I already had a commitment for that evening whenever we set that date. And he probably will do a better job than I am now. So
I appreciate you being willing to take that. So, Mr. Chair, I think that concludes my remarks. I'm good. Now we're down to the chairman's comments. Before I should have a new school board meeting schedule. We did add back the quarterly meetings we had in our attendance areas. Also, on August 28th and 29th, the School Board Association School Law Conference in Charleston. Anyone plans to attend, so Ms. Patsy knows. She'll have that took care of. Other than that, we have no other business tonight. Certainly.
I'm looking at to compliment the staff and administration all over the gap. And I recognize that we went through quite a few changes, through a whole lot of telephone calls, well, not the first school, but I didn't really make it to it, so I didn't want to throw that out. Appreciate it. Yes. Yeah. I think let's do this week.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. It's an undertaking. We forget about those who had to go through it, but it's been a difficult year for everyone, especially for our staff, trying to keep school going, and keep educating our kids. And we do say thank you and do appreciate you for what you've done each and every one. This time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.